right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on Earlymark Check the Spec series. Recently, I've had the pleasure of being in meetings with Will, and he's provided some fascinating insights into procurement, the different types of procurement, and what that means not only for architects, but for manufacturers. Will Hamlyn-Harris joins us today with quite the resume. Bachelor of Architecture and Environmental Design, a registered architect since 2010, an Olympian. Just let that sink in. And a specification consultant since 2008, and not to forget, co-founder of Earlymark. Big welcome to Will.
Hey Michael, good to chat with you.
Likewise, mate. Thank you for your time. So, Will, let's start with a few questions. Now, these have come from topics that we've had raised to us in meetings. So I'll start with the three types of procurement, or at least the three types that we have more come in contact with of recent times, and that's D&C, traditional, package. And firstly, why are there different types of procurement?
Yeah, I think that's a good question and pretty topical. So procurement comes down to risk, timing, and quality. What the knowledge of the design team is. If the client wants cost certainty and design certainty, the complexity of the project, and if they need sort of specialist input from the market. And so D&C and traditional, that'd be the two main types, with packages as a post-novated effect of the D&C procurement.
Perfect. And curious, Will, who decides which route to take?
Well, I think it depends really on who's got the ear of the client. So traditionally, this used to be the architect's role, working very closely with the client, but over time, the project manager has come in to take that role. But it still comes down to who is leading or guiding the client, and who has the knowledge on the contracts as well, and the procurements.
Love it. And depending on the type of procurement that an architect or an Earlymark consultant would be selecting for their project, how might that change the way the spec's written? And say we hit this from a designer's point of view.
Yeah, okay. First of all, the contract is king. So we need to understand the general intent and the desire of the team is outlined in the contract. So who takes responsibility, the process, the level of design, and so forth. So the specification has to follow that language. Otherwise, you start to end up of some conflicting information, which takes precedence. But the contract is king. So there's no point going against the grain of that. And let's take some examples. So if you're following a design and construct procurement route, so the architect needs to think about why this is the case. And generally it's because the client wants to pass on the risk, and the contract is written that way. So the spec needs to follow that by let's talk about specifics. Let's say if we're talking about a paint system. So if it's a D&C environment, then you're not wanting to nominate the product outright, because you want to be leading the contractor down the path rather than telling them you must use this. Because the contract in a D&C environment will say, right, the risk sits with the contractor. So if you start to say you must use this product, does that blur the lines of responsibility? And there's been lots of cases of that with a contractor saying, well, we were told to use this, so it's not our fault. So it's a lot easier to actually just nominate a product than it is to outline, all the requirements without specifically nominating a product. So if we take this paint system, like I mentioned, you can put in your design intent. So we're outlining the design intent and backed up by minimum performance. So the design intent might be, right, I want it to be red and I want a semi-gloss look. But then we need to back that up also with the performance. So we know that it might be a C5 corrosive environment. So we want to have a 15-year warranty for that environment against colour fade, against peeling. We might want to look at the VOC content. We might want to look at the dry film thickness. But really, we want to start outlining why we've selected this product. What's so special about this product that it's different to other products?
Yeah. And
we try and control the contractor from being able to swap it out for an inferior product. And like I said, it's a lot harder to outline that, but there's ways of doing that. And the architect has chosen it for a reason. So we try and explore what that reason was. If we look at a traditional type spec or a traditional procurement, so a spec to follow that, then that's when it's got design resolution. So you can just prescribe to the contractor what they should be using. So use this paint system on this material and just don't think any more about it, just go away and do it. So very different approach for selections and how to specify.
And have you seen of recent times more traditional or more D&C? Like, have you seen any patterns in the industry of what might be coming through more so now?
Yeah, it does seem quite cyclical, depending on what's happening, in the environment. If there was some issues on site that everyone's aware of, or types of projects like government projects. D&C was in favour for a while. At the moment, it feels like it might be sort of making a bit of a resurgence, but there's no definitive move that I'm sort of seeing at this point in time. And I think it generally comes down to what the project manager is aware of, what they're used to. So if they're used to, say, an AS 4902 or a 4300, which are typical D&C procurement routes, if that's what they're used to and that's what they're used to administering on site, then they might guide the client down that path. But yeah, no real definitive moves at this stage. I think if some of these big government projects start to come up again, then I think it'll follow D&C more, and stuff like the health projects with they seem to be following more of a D&C path as well. So it comes down to risk aversion.
Yeah, wow. So there can be quite different approaches taken by architects and designers depending if it's traditional D&C, etc. And I'd love to get your thoughts now on how, where a manufacturer can sort of come in and how those different types of procurement might affect them, and curious to be your thoughts on that.
All right, well, let's look at that from two parts. So first is the getting nominated. So either by the architect or by the contractor if it's a D&C. So they might make selections later on post novation with the architect. So I think to get nominated, it really comes down to, manufacturers would tell us why their products are great, and they are no doubt great, but what makes them great? So as I mentioned before, we really try to get that information from the architect and from the manufacturer to outline their point of difference. And if we can start, concisely putting that down, as you know, we use a software system with Early Select, which makes it a lot easier to nominate and find this information. But a manufacturer can provide us with certification, so certified that it complies with a standard, or a VOC, or a chain of custody. It could be a number of things that we try to incorporate there. So that's the first part of it, understanding what's special about the product. The next part is to make the architect aware of what's in the specification. So a contractor will have their own alliances or their own preferences in products. And if an architect, they want something to create a vision, whereas a contractor might be more inclined to, let's say, save money. So in the specification, there are there are steps and processes to say, right, if a contractor is to try and swap out a product, they might provide an alternative. We go through this all the time with architects. They see that a contractor would say, no, we're using this product, just make it happen. Whereas if we've got a list of, what makes it special, and then we've got a process in the specification, say the contractor must provide like for like, you've set the performance minimum through the selection initially. And so the contractor must show that their proposed product is equivalent in every aspect of performance, but also that it looks and feels a similar way as well. So that's when an architect, it's a lot easier for them to be able to compare like for like. And so what we normally do with the architects, sorry, Michael, just elaborate on that a little bit further.
No, you're right, mate.
What we'd normally do, work with the architects, is to just help them inform the contractor that these are the steps that we want you to follow. And if they can do that early on, it sets the scene. So the architect won't be pushed around and say, right, here's an alternative, you've got 24 hours to approve it. There's a time scale put in there, and there's a step process of what information is shown. And that's where understanding what's in the spec can really help facilitate the process early on in a project.
No, it's great. It was just something you mentioned that just sort of piqued my attention in particular was when you mentioned early select. And so we write out a fairly, a very robust product description for manufacturers we're working with, or that we're products that we're authoring within our platform. Does that product description change at all depending on the procurement, or is it just like once you're in there, you get tailored to what the designer needs? Is that consistent? I suppose the question is it consistent from one type of procurement to the other?
Yeah, so there are differences, and it all comes down to who's making the design decision and who's taking on the risk. So, like I said before, in a D&C, the risk is trying to be put, or the risk is effectively put onto the contractor. So, normally, it's a different description. So you shouldn't really nominate outright what the product is. You can start to do stuff like indicative to this manufacturer and indicative to this line of product. But at best, it normally is indicative to this manufacturer, premium lines, or some way to describe that. We do have it with many architects come forward and say, well, no, we know exactly what we want and we're happy to take the risk for it. So if they're happy to take the risk for it, then that's when you can start to say, okay, well, I'm going to nominate this product outright. That performs the benchmark of minimum performance. And if the contractor tries to swap that out, then I'm going to fight for that because that's my, I've done some resolution here. If it's a traditional, it is a lot simpler. You can just nominate the product outright. So nominate the manufacturer, nominate the product, outline what the options are, and then the contractor, off they go. For the D&C, if you're not nominating it, then that's when we need to beef up the why. Why are we selecting, or why are we leading down the path of this product? And like I said, the performance can be, warranty or thicknesses or Green Star initiatives, Australia made. There's a whole reason why this product would be selected, and we just need to outline that, which makes it then they're the benchmark elements, which the contractor needs to say, right, we do this, check, 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 or if we don't do this, it makes it easier for the architect to say, actually, that doesn't comply. It doesn't meet the minimum performance of the product that was selected initially.
And that benchmark, we can have all that certification highlighted within early select. And I suppose then I'm just thinking of so that they're in those D&C projects. They're nominated. That's where they need to also have a relationship with the contractor as well, isn't it? That's sort of that ecosystem, is that involved in spec, benchmark set, and then that relationship they'll also have with the contractor will help sort of complete that cycle, for lack of a better term. Yeah,
no, I think you're exactly right there. Because the D&C has a novation point to it.
Yep.
And so that's, depending when the contractor gets involved, it's a balance between, is it 100% design intent and 70% documented, would be a typical, D&C approach. But if the designer is getting novated with the design team to the contractor, then it does put the architect in a difficult position, because they had one client who's interested in creating, a nodal project that looks wonderful, creates excitement, and then you're coming across to the contractor. So you want to make sure you got everything in position there, that there's no loopholes for the contractor to undermine what the vision was. But that product will get selected along the way somewhere. And for the D&C, it's normally under the contractor post novation. So that's back to your point. Then the manufacturer needs to have, obviously, a relationship with the designer as to why they would use it, and then with the contractor when the practical application of it getting built and selected on foresight.
And an understanding that they've been included in that project at a really early stage then helps them facilitate some relationships with those contractors if it's not already in place as well. So that's really interesting stuff.
Just on that, I think with the with the products and manufacturers, perhaps in the past with designers, they might have perceived to have a bad name, being quite pushy and use my product. But if you can start to look at it from a what's best for project perspective, then that's when you start to get all the parties involved. So the manufacturer has got good input, the architect obviously has a lot of input, and then the contractor as well. So we try to be at the center of that, to grab the best of information and desires from everyone and ensure that what we put in is best for projects. So it's accurate, it aligns the contract, and there's processes in place to help protect that selection.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic, Will. And I think we've definitely covered off on the questions that I had. Was there anything else that you wanted to throw in, Will, or you feel like we've sort of, I know it's only a short video. Is there anything else you feel like we should be covering off with procurement, or to this point we've sort of given everyone a bit of an overview?
Yeah, I think on procurement we try and do some presentations for the architects and actually for the manufacturers as well, of what the procurement means for the specification, what it means for the design team, and how to align that to protect themselves and their client. So there is an intent as to why they're selecting that procurement. So I think in the past, traditionally in Australia, it was one spec suits all situations, which is fundamentally flawed and does create a few issues on site. We've had many examples where we've had to redo specifications from other people because it just didn't align to procurement. Like nominating, a contract will outline who the parties are. So it's between this person, and it's administrated by this person. So there's no point outlining, entities which just don't exist in the contractual environment. If it's a superintendent, there's no point calling out the architect or project manager or engineer. You have to really understand who the parties of the contract are, what the intent is, and then the specification is a contractual technical document. So it has to be aligned and cohesive with the full suite. So, I mean, we do this day in, day out for the last 15 years. So we're here to help our clients on that process as well.
And that might be a nice opportunity for any architects, designers, anyone that's interested. Reach out to us, message us. We can certainly have conversations with them, as you touched on. And that's same for manufacturers. You got questions from this video, just reach out and let's have a conversation and make sure we're all working from the same page. Yeah,
I mean, we're here to help. So we see ourselves as part of the design team and part of the process. So the more they lean on us, the better the outcome we feel.
Love that. Will, thank you for your time, mate. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Michael. Great to catch up.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.